I'll be discussing Chapter 16, Custom Clearance. Outline includes duty determination, non-tariff barriers, custom clearance process, and foreign trade zones or FTZs. Duty determination. Duty is the amount of tax paid on an imported good. The amount of duty that an importer has to pay is determined by three factors: the type of goods, which is their classification, the value of the goods, their valuation, and the country from which the goods originated, which is the rules of origin. The tariff is the rate at which an import is taxed. The rate is dependent on the classification of the goods as well as their country of origin. The tariff rate is so-called the duty rate. So it will be depending on the valuation as well as the tariff percentage per each country. Okay, the receiving country, the importing country. Okay, classifications. For almost all countries, the classification of goods follows the Harmonized System or HS of classification. Every product has an international 6-digit code which is used to determine the product's tariff rate. Countries can add up to 4 additional digits. Here are the classification numbers of golf shoes in the United States. So 6402.19.05 so means that golf shoes for men, for women, and for other people. So the first 6 digits represent the root of the international coding, and the last 4 digits are country specific. So it will be depending on the country where does that specific shoes came from. The harmonized system is very large list comprised of 21 sections divided by product or material, 97 chapters, the first 2 digits of HS number. Each chapter is then divided into headings, the first 4 digits of the HS number. Each heading is then divided into subheading, which is 6 digits. The correct classification of an imported good is generally made by the importer and then verified by customs office. So that's why it's really hard for us to determine those things. That's why some of the companies are just partnering with custom brokers since they are the one knowledgeable with that. But of course, your logistics team should know things about this. Okay. Classification rules of interpretation. Classifications are made according to very specific rules of interpretation. The section, chapter, and heading only serve as guides, and the correct classification may be different section, chapter, and heading altogether. The classification of an incomplete or unfinished product is that of the finished product. For example, shipments that contain all the sub-assemblies for final product should be classified as the final product rather than individual parts. This is true of chemical compounds as well. So basically, we classify all those raw materials as the finished good, as the classification of the finished goods, where that specific raw material will be used. Okay. In doubt between two classification, the one with the most specific description is the correct one. However, if the product is made of several parts, each of which would lead to different classification, then the classification that lends it its essential character is the correct one. So it's very complicated. When there is no category under which a specific product can be classified, then the classification that should be used is that of a product that would be most like it. So it will be depending on our expertise, our experience, and some knowledge about um, customs terminologies. Packaging materials are classified with the products with which they enter, such would be the case for camera cases, for example. However, if a container has usage beyond the product itself, then it must be entered and be classified separately. When comparing classification, only description at the same level should be compared. It is not appropriate to compare a heading to a subheading, for example. Valuation. Most duty is collected based on the valuation of the goods. custom terminology is that duty is collected ad valorem. It is therefore very important to determine the correct value of the goods. For custom purposes, valuation is generally the amount billed by the exporter and shown on the invoice. However, there are some cases where the invoice amount is modified or superseded, depending on the customer or the supplier. Valuation and Incoterms rules. For most countries, the dutiable amount is the amount on which duty is calculated is the landed value of the goods. This is interpreted by the most countries as the CIF or CIP value of the goods, the amount that the importer would pay if the purchase was made on CIF or CIP basis. Other use the CFR or CBT value. If the invoice is for an FAS transaction, the cost of international transportation and insurance are added to the invoice value to determine the dutiable amount. If the invoice is for a DAP transaction, the cost of on carriage in the importing country should be deducted from the dutiable amount. It uses a different standard for dutiable amount. Goods imported in the United States are valued on an FAS or FCA basis, or the value of the goods as they were leaving the exporting country. A U.S. importer receiving goods on a CIF or CIP basis should therefore deduct the cost of international transportation and insurance from the invoice value to determine the dutiable amount. In all cases, it is therefore critical to have exporters provide as much detail as possible on invoices so that the importer can determine the correct dutiable amount and pay. In cases, customs determine that the invoice amount is not reliable and another dutiable amount should be used. So it's common for customs, right? There are four alternative methods used by custom authorities worldwide to determine how goods must be valued: the comparative method, deductive method, computed or reconstructed value method, and method of last resort. Alternative methods of valuation: comparative method. The dutiable value of the goods is based upon the value of identical or similar goods imported in similar quantity to the same country. So they will be basing the tariff or the taxes based on that. Deductive method: the value of these goods is determined from the price at which identical or similar goods are sold within 90 days of importation in the importing country using normal markups in the distribution channel. So they will look for the pricing for the past 90 days. Computed or reconstructed method: the value of the goods is determined by computing the manufacturing cost of the goods, adding customary expenses for overhead, as well as reasonable profit. And lastly, we have the method of last resort. Custom use well-trained and well-informed custom official to determine the value of the goods imported. No specific guideline are given other than the valuation cannot be arbitrary. So based on their own valuation. Rules of origin. The third element necessary to determine the duty that will be applied to specific import is the country of origin of the goods. Goods are given a country of origin based upon a set of rules that are known as rules of origin. Rules of origin follow one of the two following methods: substantial transformation, change in harmonized system classification. Substantial transformation: the country of origin of a product is the country in which it acquired its most substantial transformation. The determination of the substantial transformation can be very difficult in some cases and can lead to widely different results and interpretation. The substantial transformation rule is the one followed by most countries for manufactured goods. The country of origin of a computer has been based on the country of manufacture and of the motherboard, that of the final assembly of the product, and that of the operating system. Change in HS classification. The country of origin is the country in which the last change in the harmonized system classification of the product occurred. This method can sometimes lead to a product country of origin being a country in which fairly inconsequential transformation took place and where little value was added. This method is the one currently followed by the United States for textile products. Silk scarves hand-painted in Italy and that would therefore have been made in Italy under the substantial transformation rule are made in China under the change in HS classification rule because they are woven in China. So basically, they will be made in China based on the US standard. Tariffs. The tariff rate for imported products is found in the tariff schedule, which lists all possible harmonized system classification categories, as well as their associated tariff rates for different types of countries. Most tariff schedules are 2 or 3 column schedules, giving 2 or 3 different rates for each product classification, depending on the country of origin. The United States has a 2 column tariff schedule with countries with which it has normal trade relation or the NTR in column 1 and the ones with which does not have is in column 2. Tariff schedule of the United States is dense and complicated. So based from this, so it's really complicated. Duty. A watch dial of 335 mm in diameter is classified as 9114.30.4000 by United States. For dial whose country of origin is in Switzerland, the duty rate would be a compound rate. The importer would be charged 7.2% of the invoice value FCA and zero point 0.4 cents for each dial. For dial whose country of origin is in Australia, AU code, there would be no duty because of the US-Australia free trade agreement. For a dial whose country of origin is Libya, the duty rate would be 45% of the invoice value FCA and 5 cents for each dial. So it will be depending on the country. Dumping. Some exporters sells the products they are exporting at a price that is considered too low by importing country's custom office. The purpose of the strategy is to gain market share in the importing country. Such strategy is called dumping. In order to counter this strategy, importing countries can implement anti-dumping duty that is collected in addition to the regular import duty. Anti-dumping duty can reach very high levels. Some are 150 to 200% of the value of the imported goods, so depending on the country. Other import taxes. In addition to duty, several countries will collect additional taxes based on the value of the goods. These additional taxes are the way of creating additional revenues from imports. Such taxes challenge the boundaries of General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, the GATT, and the rules of World Trade Organization. The following are some of the examples of other taxes. We have the punitive duty, border tariff tax, safeguard tax, and temporary protection tax. Punitive tax. The United States, unhappy about the decision of European Union to give preferential treatment to bananas imported from certain countries, retaliated by placing a 100% duty on certain items coming from any of the European Union countries. Cashmere, blue cheese, handbags covered in plastic sheeting, and so on. Border tariff tax. Russia, in order to make more accurate tally of border flows of people, cargo, and means of transportation, imposes a 1% tax on all goods crossing its borders. Russian travelers are taxed at 0.8% of their monthly income. Safeguard tax. Argentina, after being chastised by the WTO for having increased its duty rate on footwear, reduced them and immediately reimposed them through an emergency safeguard tax designed to protect its footwear industry against foreign competition. So we could do that to protect our local market. Temporary protection tax. The United States imposed a 33% additional tariff on brooms from Mexico to allow US manufacturers to increase their efficiency so that they could compete against imports. It repealed such tax 2 years later, noting that the industry had not taken advantage of this protection period to improve its efficiency. So it could be done as well for to have higher efficiency based on our local market. The value added tax or VAT. The added tax is a tax that perceived by many countries that is very similar to a sales tax, but that is collected whenever the product's value is increased. The VAT on imports is collected at the point of entry in the country. The VAT accounting is handled in such a way that only the final consumer of the product actually pays the tax. So I think you're all familiar with that. We have 12% VAT in all our purchase in the Philippines. Non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers are policies and actions that have the effect of reducing the number of items imported in specific country. Non-tariff barriers are essentially prohibited by the GATT and WTO. The most frequent use of non-tariff barriers are quotas. There are two types of quotas, the absolute quotas and tariff rate quotas. However, countries will use other means to restrict imports such as national standards of performance or safety, pre-shipments inspection, and other unusual requirements to protect the local market. Absolute quotas. An absolute quota is a limit set by importing countries' government on the quantity of a specific commodity that can imported in a given year. For example, for rice, Philippines could impose maybe 200 tons, metric tons of rice being imported in the country to protect the local farmers. For example, the United States had no absolute quotas as of August 2013. Until 2005, the United States had absolute quotas on textile products originating in China. The quotas were eliminated in January 2005, which caused some significant market disruption, and therefore re-established for 2 years under the agreement with China on quantitative restraints. Tariff rate quotas. Under a tariff rate quota, the importing country places a two-tiered tariff rate on specific product until a specific number of units has been imported. The tariff is low. Once the quota is reached, the tariff goes up, sometimes many-fold. The United States has had a tariff rate quota on a sugar for a very long time, restricting the import of sugar from all major sugar-producing countries in the world. The quota is 1.1 million tons, or about 10% of the US consumption. Before the quota is reached, the duty is $0.01406 per kilogram. After it is reached, the duty is 0.3574 per kilogram, or 25 times higher. So they're making the tariff more higher if the quota is already achieved. National standards. At times, countries enact safety measures designed to protect their population from defective, dangerous, or unhealthy products. When these requirements are only targeting products made abroad, especially if they are based dubious or non-scientific data, they become non-tariff trade barriers. The European Union restricts the import of generally modified cereals or the GMO cereals and hormone-treated beef despite having no evidence of their potential harm. So it will be depending on the country. Pre-shipments inspection. Pre-shipments inspection (PSI) are performed by independent companies to determine that the goods shipped from the ones ordered by the importer in the correct quantity and sufficiently well packed for an international shipment. PSIs are performed at the point of departure of the goods destined to be exported. PSIs are non-tariff barriers when they become too frequent and cumbersome. Indonesia and Thailand require that all imports be subject to a pre-shipment inspections. Other non-tariff barriers. Many countries have been known to enact strange rules with regards to imports, typically aimed at protecting a certain domestic industry. Other countries require a virtual endless number of approvals and documentation before goods may be imported. France once required all imported VCRs to be inspected in a specific small town located far from the entry point. This inspection was done very slowly, with the intended consequence of preventing VCRs from entering the country. Clearance process. So entry, clearance, liquidated entry, and protest if necessary. So if you have any protest against the tariff that they will impose to your shipment. Entry, the process by which an importer notifies custom it has imported by a product. Clearance, the term used to signify that the goods have been imported into a country, duty has been paid, and they have been released by custom. Liquidated entry, an entry that has been successfully reviewed by custom authorities and for which duty has been paid. Protest, the formal request by an importer to have custom reconsider the classification of good, its valuation, or determination of its country of origin.
Customs clearance and export-import procedures. International trade connects countries, markets, and people, but behind every shipment lies a careful system known as customs clearance. This process ensures that goods moving across borders follow the laws and regulations of each country. Understanding customs clearance and import procedures is essential for businesses, traders, and even individuals involved in global commerce. What is customs clearance? Customs clearance is the official process of moving goods through a country's customs authority. It involves verifying documents, assessing duties and taxes, and ensuring compliance with trade laws. Without clearance, goods cannot legally enter or leave a country. Key documents required. To clear goods, several documents are typically needed. Commercial invoice describes the goods, their value, and bearer. Packing list provides details of packaging and contents. Bill of lading or airway bill, proof of shipment issued by the carrier. Certificate of origin shows where the goods were manufactured. Customs declaration form submitted to the customs authority for inspection. Export procedures. When exporting goods, the process usually includes export registration, obtaining licenses or permits if required. Document preparation, creating invoices, packing lists, and contracts. Customs filing, submitting export declaration and documents. Inspection and approval, customs may inspect goods before shipment. Shipment and transportation, goods are loaded and shipped overseas. Import procedures. For importing goods, the process involves import license, in some cases, permission is required. Customs declaration, submission of documents to local customs. Assessment of duties and taxes, customs calculates applicable fees. Inspection, goods may be checked for compliance and safety. Release of goods, once cleared, goods are delivered to the importer. Why customs clearance matters. Legal compliance ensures trade follows national and international laws. Revenue collection, governments earn revenue from duties and taxes. Safety and security prevents illegal or harmful products from entering markets. Smooth trade flow. Efficient clearance reduces delays and costs. Conclusion, customs clearance and import procedures form the backbone of international trade. By understanding the process, businesses can avoid delays, reduce costs, and build stronger global partnerships. With proper documentation, planning, and compliance, the movement of goods becomes smooth and efficient, keeping global trade alive.
Required documentation. At the minimum, the following three documents are required by every country to make an entry: a form designated for entry, specific to importing country, a certificate of origin to ascertain the country of origin, a commercial invoice with enough information to determine the value and classification. However, certain goods require much greater documentation. It is very important to have good invoices. The importer and customs determine the classification of goods and the dutiable amount from the invoice submitted by the exporter. Custom clearance process. Required markings. All products must have the marking made in name of the country or product name of the country. Merchandise visa for products whose importation is limited by quotas, and particularly for textile products, a bilateral monitoring system has been implemented by the importing country by the importing and exporting countries. These types of goods require a special visa to be allowed in the importing country. Custom brokers. Custom broker is an independent firm representing the importer and that has acquired knowledge and experience required to make import entries efficiently and to deal with custom effectively. Custom bond. Custom requires the importer or the custom broker to post a bond. A bond is either a sum of money deposited with custom from which any unpaid duty can be withdrawn, or an insurance policy with a surety company that acts as guarantor of the importer or the custom broker, and which would be required to pay if the duty were not paid on time. Custom standards, reasonable care, a standard of behavior set and enforced by U.S. Custom that is expected of importers if they want their customs entries to be cleared quickly and the custom inspection to minimum. Informed compliance, a standard of training and performance. If an importer has been found compliant, the likelihood that one of its shipments is going to be inspected is minimal. Therefore, minimizing delays at entry and allowing the importer to organize its supply chain more predictably. It also lowers costs and merchandise is cleared quickly. Duty drawbacks. A duty drawback is a tax break granted by some countries, including the United States, to exporters who are using imported parts in the products they export. In the United States, custom will refund 99% of the duty paid by an importer for imported products that are re-exported unused, imported parts that are used without substantial transformation in the assembly or manufacturing of products that are eventually re-exported. Unfortunately, in many countries, including the US, the process of applying for duty drawback can be cumbersome, or it's really hard to do that. Foreign trade zones or FTZs. Foreign trade zones or the pre-trade zones FTZs are specific location of a country that had been acquired as a special custom status. They are areas of the country that for custom purposes are located outside of a country. This means goods can be shipped to FTZs without paying duties or being subject to quotas. It is only when the goods leave the FTZs and enter the country that they are subject to duty. In most countries, goods admitted to FTZs must be legal in the country in which the zones is located. The exemptions applies only to custom purposes, not other legal requirements. So the pre-trade zone, so maybe, or the industrial parts that the government had been allocated that they could have the foreign trade zones. So as an example, exporter, so you go to the pre-trade zone, so it means duty free. But if you go to customer B, to a country B, which they might impose you a duty since you don't have an agreement with them with regards to foreign trade zone. That ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.